Good morning. Today I want to talk about Donald Trump and the astrological reasons or correlations behind this indictment. And let me also point out that when something this big happens, there are usually multiple astrological associations with the event, and not just a single factor. And this is because single factors in astrology tend to have a small effect size. Uh, It's only when you combine multiple factors together that you tend to statistically uh, arrive at a much larger effect size. In other words, when many factors are working together, the impact tends to be bigger. Okay, let's see if I can share my screen now and we can get started. And let's see, I've got to make a few adjustments here. Let me hide some controls from me so I can see what's going on. Okay, and here we are, the indictment of Donald Trump. Now, first, there are going to be some factors in the background that are contributing to this. Uh, One of the things was we had a full moon yesterday when Trump was indicted. And here I have a bi-wheel where the chart on the inside is the chart I usually use for America, which is the July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Resolution for Independence. However, you can use any July 1776 chart for America. The things I talk about are going to be operative in all of them. Okay, now if on the outside, if we look at how this full moon chart is affecting the USA chart that I use, and by the way, full moons, they always intensify things. So it adds more energy, more importance to whatever's going on. Well, in this full moon chart, transiting Chiron is at 19 degrees 56 minutes Aries. It's almost an exact conjunction with natal Chiron at 20 degrees 6 minutes of Aries in this July 2nd, 1776 chart. Now, Chiron is really a drive within us to transcend the visible physical reality that we see. However, in order to go beyond the structure of this physical reality, quite often Chiron has to break up that structure a little bit, cause some cracks in that Saturnian shell that we've erected. And that is where the wounding comes in. It's not that Chiron wants to wound us. It's not that we have a drive within us to wound ourselves. It's simply that that often happens as a matter of course. And so with Chiron, transiting Chiron, conjunct natal Chiron, what often happens is we get a lot of wounding, also some transcendence among people or sections of society. But as I like to say, maybe 90% wounding, 10% inspiration. Now, what we're going through with Chiron, we've been through this before. Let me go back one slide. If you look at Saturn here at 14 plus degrees Libra, it wasn't too long ago that transiting Chiron was in opposition to Saturn. So first we have Chiron going into opposition with Saturn and then into conjunction with natal Chiron. And we've been through this before, back in the early 70s. From 1972 to 1975, transiting Chiron made a series of oppositions to natal Saturn and a series of conjunctions to natal Chiron in the July 1776 charts for America. These aspects can trigger either wounding, healing, or transcendence. And the major story during this period was the Watergate scandal and the Senate Select Committee to investigate President Nixon that scandal. Also, the environmental movement was in the news, getting off the ground, and Roe v. Wade was in the news. It was during this period that women were given control over their own bodies, legally given control. And we had major wounding to the country during this period from President Nixon and Watergate. But the Senate Select Committee that investigated Nixon and that scandal, that was a moment of transcendence for Congress. That was that 10% of inspiration or transcendence that accompanied the 90% wounding. Okay, well, guess what? We're going through exactly the same thing today. These aspects are repeating themselves from 2022 through 2025. We have a series of oppositions of transiting Chiron to natal Saturn, followed by a series of conjunctions between transiting Chiron and natal Chiron. This summer, we don't get exact conjunction, but it's a near conjunction that has been impacting us all summer. And so we're now experiencing both astrologically and in terms of events over the years from 2022 to 2025, things that are similar to what we saw in the 70s. So far during this period, we've seen the work of the January 6th committee. Again, one of Congress's finer moments, and ongoing investigations, indictments of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has severely wounded this country, just like Nixon did. Also, climate change and Roe v. Wade, environmental issues, and a woman's right to have control over her own body. They've been in the news again during this period. These aspects repeat themselves, and if history doesn't exactly repeat itself, as we say these days, it doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. It's the same sort of stuff happening under the same kind of aspects. Okay, now let's take a quick look at Donald Trump's chart. An interesting thing is he was born at the time of a lunar eclipse. His sun and moon are very strongly conjunct that lunar nodal axis. Uranus is also conjunct it. Sun, North Node, and Uranus are all in Gemini in the 10th house. The 10th house has to do with status and power in society. And this is astrologically why Trump has an insatiable desire for power. Now, also in his chart, he has Mars in Leo. It's in the 12th house, but it's very close to his ascendant. It's conjunct his ascendant. So, what does this do? Well, Trump is very combative. He can be very aggressive, though he likes to do this all from behind the scenes. Let's see, what else do we have? There's a conjunction of Saturn with Venus here in Trump's 11th house of working with others, group creativity, collaboration. But Venus is the ruler of his 10th house of status and society. So anytime anything is affecting either Saturn or Venus in his chart, it's going to tend to affect his status, his prestige, and power in society. Okay, this is somewhat interesting. It's he has Jupiter conjunct Chiron. Jupiter is in Libra. It's in the second house, but he has Libra on the cusp of his third house, which has to do with communication. Jupiter is making a strong trine up here to these planets in the 10th house. This gives Trump a lot of luck. Jupiter tends to expand things, make things grow, and then when it's affecting our personal planets in a harmonious way, it gives us a lot of natural luck. So Trump has always lucked out in business, always lucked out in his status. Chiron, at its best, Chiron conjunct Jupiter would make him an inspired leader. Some think he is. But Chiron can also do wounding. What we see happening over and over in Trump's case is whenever Trump gets into trouble, he always plays the victim. He says it's not his fault, it's people are after him. He's the real victim here. Now, Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Sagittarius is down here in his fourth house, and it's what we call an intercepted sign. In other words, it doesn't appear on the cusp of a house. It's entirely contained in the fourth house. The fourth house starts with Scorpio, and then instead of the fifth house, beginning with Sagittarius, it skips over Sagittarius, starts with Capricorn. When a sign is intercepted, its actions are a little bit more hidden. The fourth house traditionally rules the home, the personal environment. But in Trump's case, his home, his personal environment is the entire Trump organization. That is a family business. And he likes to keep things about that business hidden. Now, let's see, Pluto is in his Leo in his 12th house. Pluto represents power. The 12th house, things in the 12th house, they tend to be hidden. They're coming at the end of this entire cycle of 12 houses, so it's kind of removed from this reality a bit, not easy to be seen. The 12th house is also where we have to settle accounts for our past actions, so we also call this the house of self-undoing and hidden enemies. Uh, in Trump's case, this represents a lot of power he has. Pluto is making a very nice sextile to his Jupiter, which is trining these planets up here. That is quite beneficial for his business, but he exercises a lot of power behind the scenes. Again, these are things he likes to keep hidden. Okay, now here I have a bi-wheel where the chart on the inside is that July 2nd, 1776 chart. So what I say applies to all the July 1776 charts people might use for America. On the outside is Donald Trump's chart. And look at this. Trump's Chiron, 14 plus degrees Libra. America's Saturn, 14 plus degrees Libra in these July 1776 charts for America. Saturn is discipline control, but also frustration and restriction. Chiron can be inspiration, transcendence, but also wounding, uh, sometimes in between healing. Uh, in Trump's case, I would say that he has severely wounded America. His supporters will see it as he is breaking down structures in order to heal America. If they want to look at it that way, fine. I see it differently, and many other people will see it differently. But you look at these charts, and this is a strong indication that this is going to be an individual who, given the chance, he is going to wind up severely wounding this country. And I think that's what's happening. Okay. Now, I want to look at first Trump's secondary progressions, and then we'll look at his solar arc progression, and then some transits. And these are three different techniques for forecasting, for prognostication. And something we're going to see is the planets Jupiter, Pluto, and Mars being prominent in all instances. Mars causes conflict and actions and wars, so to speak. And we've talked already about how Jupiter has a lot to do with Trump's personal environment, his family business, his personal sphere of influence, which is quite large. Pluto is his power and his exercise of that power, which he likes to keep hidden. Okay, and the secondary progressions. This is a technique where one day of life corresponds to a year of life. The reason this works is because we have a daily cycle and a yearly cycle. all cycles can be represented by circles, and from a mathematical perspective, we can consider all circles as equivalent. There's a natural equivalence between all circles. So in the province of the mind, it doesn't matter how much time that cycle or circle takes, they can all be considered equivalent regardless of the time period, and they can interact with one another. So that is why a day of life can correspond to a year of life for terms of prediction. Okay, so if we, let's see, progress this chart. Let's see, let me go back one real quick, make sure I'm on the right thing. Yeah, I'm where I want to be. If we progress this chart to August 1st, 2023, we see that his progressed Jupiter is at 25 degrees, 25 plus degrees of Libra. His natal Venus is at 25 plus degrees of Cancer. This is a square, it's a tense relationship. And remember, Venus, it rules his 10th house. It has to do with this prestige and status in society. So his troubles are going to multiply at this point in time. All right, now let's look at a solar arc progression. A solar arc progression is similar in some ways to the secondary progression. Uh, the sun moves 1 day for each year of life, but in the solar arc progression, we move all the other planets the same number of degrees that the sun has moved, so that the all these planets stay in the same relationship to the sun as they are in the natal chart. A lot of astrologers think that secondary progressions may operate more on a psychological level. Solar arc progressions tend to be more effective at causing events. And what do we have here? Well, his solar arc progressed Pluto at 23 plus degrees Libra is making a very strong square to his natal Saturn at 23 plus degrees Cancer. And Pluto is death and transformation. Saturn is conjunct his natal Venus, so that affects his status in society. So a big change, a big transformation to his status in society. Within a couple of years, his solar arc progressed Pluto will probably make an exact square with his natal Venus at 25 plus degrees Cancer. So the next couple of years are probably going to see a lot of changes for Donald Trump and his status in society. Okay. Now, also in the solar arc progress chart, he has Mars at 10 plus degrees Scorpio. That is making a strong square to his natal Pluto at 10 plus degrees Leo. Again, remember I said that Mars, Pluto, and Jupiter, they're going to appear over and over when we look at what's going on with chart using all these different methods of prognostication. Anyway, this means that Trump is probably going to be in a struggle, a fight at this point in time. And again, a lot of these things he's tried to hide are probably now going to come to light. We're going to learn about how he has tried to exercise power behind the scenes, and possibly in ways which are not very legal. Okay, now let's look at how the full moon chart was affecting Trump on August 1st. If we look at this chart, let's see, the sun was at 9 plus degrees Leo, the moon was at 9 plus degrees Aquarius. Trump's natal Pluto is at 10 plus degrees Leo. So uh, this lunation, this full moon, was strongly affecting his Pluto. Again, having an impact upon his power, his use of power, and all those things he likes to keep hidden. Also, uh, in the transits from this full moon on August 1st, he has, let's see, transiting Venus at 26 plus degrees Leo, strongly conjunct his natal Mars at 26 plus degrees Leo. And remember, in his natal chart, Venus rules his 10th house of status in society, fame, fortune, his prestige. And this also indicates he's going to be in a fight. He's going to be in a struggle over things. Okay, let's see. This is a midpoint chart. On the inside, I have Donald Trump's natal chart. On the outside, I have midpoints. And in his natal chart, I have the positions of Pluto and Jupiter circled. Again, they're coming into play. And the midpoint between these two is at 13 degrees, 45 minutes of Virgo. That's where the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint is. Now, Jupiter is expansion, Pluto is transformation. This is a point when stimulated, which might cause great transformations in things. When we put this into context, into the context of Trump's natal chart, remember that Jupiter and Pluto have to do with family business that he likes to keep hidden and his exercise of power that he likes to keep hidden. So both of those things are going to be highlighted when this point at 13 degrees 45 minutes Virgo is stimulated. Okay, go back to his transits during the full moon. Look at where transiting Mars is. 13 degrees 43 minutes Virgo. At the time of the full moon, it was almost exactly in conjunction with that midpoint. And within a couple of hours, it's going to be in exact conjunction with that midpoint. So the full moon and Mars, they were stimulating that Jupiter-Pluto midpoint in his chart, meaning that things about his uh, family business and his exercise of power are going to come to light. Uh, and of course, when he was president, his home was the White House. So things he did in the White House, that's coming to light. And because Mars is involved, it's going to be a war. It's going to be a fight, a struggle. Okay, little aside here. When a midpoint between two planets is stimulated by a third planet, it is like having for that moment all three planets in conjunction. Additionally, it activates a particular harmonic chart in which the two planets and their midpoint are all in conjunction. In this particular case, both Pluto and Jupiter are 33.7 degrees from their midpoint, and this corresponds to the 360 degree divided by 33.7 degree harmonic. Degrees over degrees, the units cancel out. That just gives us a pure number of 10.6824925 harmonic. Okay, this is the harmonic of the chart. In this harmonic chart, the distance between Pluto, Jupiter, and their midpoint is mathematically eliminated, and the resulting auxiliary chart gives us additional information on what to expect when this midpoint is stimulated. Now, I'm not going to go through all the mathematics of how you create a harmonic chart, though it is very interesting. For now, just think of it conceptually this way. Suppose you have your natal chart printed on a rubber sheet, a sheet that can be stretched. As we go through life, sometimes we're activating two planets, two drives simultaneously, and that's like bringing them into conjunction. Well, If your chart is on this rubber sheet, you can imagine stretching that sheet in order to bring those two planets into conjunction. But when you do so, everything else moves around too. And this results essentially in what we call the harmonic chart. The goal is to bring, in this case, Pluto, Jupiter, and their midpoint into conjunction. And this particular harmonic chart does it for us. Okay, now let me make this little note or caveat. Even though in the harmonic charts that follow, we should have Pluto and Jupiter in exact conjunction, you will see a few minutes of separation between them due to round-off error. This happens because software programs for creating harmonic charts will usually round off any decimal expansions that are part of the harmonic. Now, this number I have up here, I found it just using my scientific calculator, but even this number is rounded off a bit. This ratio is going to come out as a repeating decimal, where you have a decimal expansion that repeats, and we haven't even gotten to the end of the first part, which is later on going to start repeating. So even what I have down here is rounded off. The software programs, the astrological software I use, it rounds it off a little bit more, but the error is going to be negligible. It's not going to make any difference in the interpretation. Okay, here we see that harmonic chart, and it's very interesting. Technically, I should have Jupiter and Pluto in exact conjunction as it is due to round-off error. They're just about 7 minutes of arc from exact, but that's not going to affect the interpretation. What's important here is this conjunction over here is in opposition to a conjunction between Mars and Saturn. So this tells us that Mars is not going to play nicely when it stimulates this midpoint. It's going to cause some fights, some struggles, some combativeness. Saturn is going to add additional frustrations. These conjunctions are close to the cusp of the 6th house and to the 12th house. So this means that karma, past actions are going to be involved. Now, let me also point out that Mars actually stimulates, passes over this Jupiter-Pluto midpoint roughly about every couple of years, usually a little less than a couple of years. So this happens several times throughout his lifetime. But it's the other things going on which make it more important this time. The other transits, the progressions, the solar secondary progressions, solar arc progressions. The fact that transits show that America is going to be wounded at this time and that he's a part of that. That's what makes such a big difference now. Okay, now the midheaven, the cusp of the 10th house in Trump's natal chart, in the harmonic chart, it gets moved to about 10 plus degrees of Scorpio. And these conjunctions of Jupiter and Pluto, Mars and Saturn, they're going to be strongly squaring this. So as a result, his reputation, his status in society, it's being affected a lot. Now, here's another thing going on. In this harmonic chart, he has Mercury, 6 plus degrees Pisces, conjunct the cusp of his 7th house. 7th house has to do with others, Mercury, communication. It's in opposition to Venus over here at 6 plus degrees Virgo, conjunct the cusp of his 1st house. 1st house has to do with himself. But remember, in his natal chart, Venus rules his 10th house, has to do with his prestige, status, and society. So what does this suggest? Put into context, it suggests that people are talking against him, and that is affecting his current status and power and prestige in society. Now, he does have a silver lining with this harmonic chart. Let's see. He has Sun, ascendant, and Venus all over here, making a trine to Chiron over here at 12 plus degrees of Capricorn. And they're both making nice sextiles to the point that his natal midheaven was transferred to at 10 plus degrees Scorpio. The way I think we're seeing this play out, remember, Chiron can result in transcendence, but often causes wounding. And in Trump's case, remember in his natal chart, he has Jupiter conjunct Chiron. And the way it's worked out in his life is it seems he always plays the victim. He claims that he is the one being wounded. And he is doing that now. And by claiming that it's all a wind shot, it's all a weaponized Department of Justice going after him. He's done nothing wrong. He's the victim here. He's the one wounded. It does enhance his status with his followers. Those hardcore followers of him, they're still sticking with him and they believe everything he says. So that's the silver lining for him. Again, throughout all of this, we have seen Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto involved, things which are being hidden, things having to do with his personal life, his family business, his White House time, when that was his home, that's all coming to light. His reputation is being affected. He's having to fight. But it's just enhancing his popularity and status among his followers. And as usual, he is claiming that he is the victim here. Okay. Now, another thing we can look at is how does this harmonic chart interact with this natal chart? The natal chart's on the inside, harmonic chart's on the outside. The natal chart is who we are at our core astrologically, but at times these auxiliary charts get activated. And we can ask ourselves, how is, when I'm acting under the influence of this chart, how is this going to affect my core here? Well, let's see what he has. Natally, he has Pluto at 10 plus degrees Leo. That is in conjunction with the Saturn and Mars in his harmonic chart that we've been looking at. And Jupiter and Pluto in this harmonic chart are in a strong opposition to his Pluto. So again, this is another way in which Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto are being activated and affecting him. And this is another way in which the hidden ways he has used power, the ways in which he implements power behind the scenes, how he likes to keep hidden, these things are now coming to light for better or for worse. And I believe this is going to be the last slide. We can take a look ahead and see how is he going to be affected by transits for the rest of 2023 and into 2024, 2025. Well, he has a couple of times that transiting Chiron will be in opposition to his natal Jupiter in 2023 and 2024. This is exact in October of this year and early March of next year. Jupiter is his luck. All that luck he has had, which has given him great power, that luck is probably going to be wounded. Following that, he has Saturn squaring Uranus. Uranus in his natal chart is in the 10th house, has a lot to do with his power. Saturn is restriction. So again, his reputation, his status is going to be restricted during periods of 2024 and early 2025. Uranus conjunct the midheaven. Uranus represents change. The big question is this going to be a change for the better or change for the worse? And That conjunction will be exact in June 2024, early December 2024, and March of 2025. It's going to be pretty close to exact around election time in 2024. And again, that raises questions. What will the change in status be? Will he become president again? Or will it be a very negative change in status? We'll just have to wait and see. You know, everyone assumes at this point that Trump and Biden will be the candidates for president in 2024. Given Trump's legal troubles, given Biden's age, I can't say for certain. A lot of things could happen between now and then. So I'm going to wait until we get much closer to the election uh, before I'm certain about who the candidates actually will be. And when we get much closer to that election, then I'll talk more about what I think the outcome might be. We never know for certain, as I always say. Astrology is just a weather report. We don't actually know specific events. We just know what the climate is going to be like, what the weather is going to be. And from that, we can talk about probabilities of certain things happening or not happening. Okay. Also, in 2024-25, he will have Uranus square Mars. There's going to be a pretty lengthy period during which that is effect. And 2024, Mars is conjunct his ascendant. That's going to be his personal self. So there are going to be a lot of changes involving who he is, his personal life, and probably a lot of combativeness that will be involved. Now, following these periods, let's see, we're going to have some squares from Saturn that will be affecting him personally. And that's going to happen in early 2025. He's going to have more restrictions put on his life. And then later in 2025, we have Chiron first making exact squares to his Saturn, followed by exact squares to his Venus. And remember, Venus rules his 10th house of status in society. Saturn's in conjunction with that. Anything affecting those two planets tends to affect his status. So his reputation, his status might undergo a lot of wounding at this time. And finally, in 2025, there are a couple of periods here during which the planet Uranus will be squaring his ascendant. Uranus always causes change. If something like this were happening to me, well, it probably wouldn't be so bad. I might get some new ideas, some new inspirations, make some changes in direction, might feel a little bit of anxiety, but might embark on some new adventures. In Trump's case, uh, he does not seem to be that evolved to me and many others. And whenever something is happening by transit, it's usually the worst thing that happens. He's not like some other people who have learned from adversity and learn how to always roll with the punches and turn lemons into lemonade. Instead, I've observed this over and over again. Whenever there's negative transit in Trump's chart, usually something very negative happens. So there's a good probability that that will be the case in the year 2025. Okay, and that does it for this presentation. Let me stop sharing. And so to recap, we have seen multiple ways in which uh, Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto have been interacting uh, to affect Trump, usually in a negative way. And so it seems like the combined impact of all of these progressions, solar arcs, secondary progressions, and transits, and the full moon, and the general wounding that the country is undergoing now, these things have all come together to bring a lot of trouble to Donald Trump. Uh, I expect a lot of bumps in the road ahead for him. But as I often say, uh, nothing is for certain in astrology. We only predict the weather. We give probabilities about what might happen. But there are always ways to make something a little different happen. It's just like in real life. If you see a hurricane coming, you can choose to get out of town and avoid that calamity. Trump, however, is usually not good at avoiding these calamities. So I'm expecting the worst, but we'll just have to wait and see. Uh, I expect too that his base will continue to rally around him at this time. And so, as I say, we'll just have to wait and see how things turn out. But for now, it doesn't look good. And so that's where I'll end this recording. I hope you got some good information out of it, and I hope to see you again in the future. So long.